Betty Ford, breast surgery to remove a cancerous tumor in 1974. Within 2 weeks, a similar operation for Happy Rockefeller. Suddenly, American women are reminded of the dangers of breast cancer, and they rush to have mammograms. So many that the National Cancer Institute recommended that mass screenings of breast x-rays be stopped. Critics said the mammograms were causing more cancers than they were detecting. In fact, women's breast and reproductive organs are very sensitive to radiation and not easy to protect. Women who are pregnant have even more to fear.
If radiation occurs during the developmental period of the fetus, in other words, earlier in pregnancy, there is a small risk that that particular baby may be malformed.
Here in Oklahoma City, a client of attorney Howard Berry went to the doctor complaining of nausea. He determined it could be 3 things, one of which was pregnancy. A test was run, but before the results were back, she was given an x-ray examination. It came out negative, but Berry's client was pregnant.
He told her that she could either continue the pregnancy or she could and keep her fingers crossed that there was no damage to the fetus, or she could have a therapeutic abortion, which is what she did. One of the things that happened to her was that as a result of the abortion, there was a serious question now as to whether she can have any children at all. So she may end up not having any children at all because of this mistake.
More than 100,000 new cases of breast cancer will be discovered this year, meaning more and more women will take mammograms. Yet in trying to avoid cancer, are these women taking more of a gamble?
The issue of mammography has been really clouded. There are 2 parts that one has to consider in mammography. One is when the doctor feels a lump or when the patient feels a lump. Then it's crucial to have a mammogram to determine whether the lump is a cancer or maybe a cancer, and how safe is the mammogram. They're much safer now than they ever were. The dose that we use now is approximately 1/50th of what we were doing 10 or 15 years ago.
X-ray technicians tell us that pregnant women do get x-rayed, accidentally. One said that patients shouldn't be embarrassed to ask their doctors questions because the doctor who won't answer isn't doing his job. Tomorrow, are too many emergency room x-rays unnecessary x-rays? I'm Sherry Sellers. Sarah is Kitty's first child. Kitty and her 30-year-old husband decided to marry 2.5 years ago. She says they planned to start a family right away for 2 reasons. She knew the risk of having an abnormal child increases with the mother's age, and she says she was concerned about being too old to keep up with a growing youngster. There was also the question of whether she could become pregnant.
In our population in the less than 35 age bracket, we find the reason for infertility in 96.5% of the couples who come to us. When a woman presents older than 35, we have less of a chance of finding a reason, and we attribute that to age.
General good health is the most important factor, says obstetrician Joe Michael Edwards, but he says any woman who chooses to delay childbearing should note she might face problems that come with an aging body.
Certainly that's one of the biggest strains, probably physiologic strains on the body is pregnancy.
While doctors like Edwards point out that a woman's body may be better able to handle pregnancy while she's in her 20s, many also observe that women like Kitty may be better prepared emotionally for motherhood once their careers are established and their wild oats have been sown.
There you go.
Kitty says at her age she's less ambitious, more settled, and sure of what she wants. And she bets that'll make her a better mother to Sarah than she would have been 10 years ago. The emotional benefits versus the physical risk to mother and child must be weighed by each couple. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at the physical complications older women must face. I'm Sherry Sellers.
A woman at the age of 35 does not have the luxury of time. She may find that she has a problem that is diagnosable and is treatable, but by the time that the treatment has had the chance to work, she may be at an age where it will indeed take her even more time to get pregnant, all things being equal.
This woman and her husband have been trying to have a baby for several years now. Almost 35 years old, she's about to find out if there's any hope of a pregnancy. In this test, Dr. Wentz will inject some dye into her uterus and then take an x-ray of the tubes to see if they're open.
I'm going to watch it over here on the monitor, and you okay? Now what we're seeing now is the contrast. See it going into the uterine cavity, and you see how it's going around, and now out, there it goes out the right tube. Okay, out, there it goes, but nothing's happening on the left.
The diagnosis is not a good one. One tube is blocked and the other is scarred, making fertilization unlikely. If the woman was younger, says Dr. Wentz, she might suggest further treatment. But since she's on the downside of her fertility, it's not likely to pay off.
Age itself is a risk factor. We know that the peak fertility in a woman is about the age of 24, and after that it's all downhill.
Dr. Wentz says there are a number of thoughts as to why fertility goes down as age goes up. One is that the woman does not produce as many eggs as she used to. Another, that the ovaries just don't function like they did before age 35.
To suddenly find out that you don't have any control over your fertility in general, it comes as a very great shock and a very great loss.
On the opposite side of the coin, imagine the shock to older parents who haven't been trying but suddenly find themselves expecting. Meet the NAST in our next report. I'm Sherry Sellers. Meet Victoria Nast, named after the Latin word for victory, says her mother. She's the unexpected apple in her older parents' eyes, a surprise that did not cause immediate rejoicing in the Nast quiet household.
It's like starting a new life again.
Mary Lou Nast is 41 years old. She's a cosmetic artist. She's married to corporate tax consultant Richard Nast. He's 48. When they found out she was pregnant, they say they were concerned about both Mary Lou's health and about the chances of having an abnormal child. So Mary Lou sought the advice of her obstetrician, who laid out the facts and risk as they were. She had given birth before with no major complications. Plus, if she wanted to go ahead, she had the advantages of advances in medical technology. Just like this couple has chosen to do, Mary Lou had an ultrasound done to determine if the baby was forming properly. And like this woman, she underwent an amniocentesis test, where fluid is taken from the mother's womb to determine if the baby has Down syndrome or any other chromosomal damage. The test turned up no abnormalities and showed that their baby was a little girl.
In the back of my mind, I always asked, how safe are these tests? You know, how sure are you? And Dr. Edwards always assured me that it was, you know, pretty safe. It had pretty good odds. So.
Once we did what I thought was the appropriate testing and found out that she indeed had a normal child, I think she felt a whole lot better about it.
Mary Lou says her most precious memory is of the moment when Dr. Edwards placed Victoria on her chest, just seconds after her birth. She says Victoria lifted her head and smiled.
Sometimes I just close my eyes, I see that little face, and I really thank the Lord that everything did turn out the way it did.
I'm Sherry Sellers.
It started off quiet enough. About 7 o'clock, they closed Commerce Street to traffic. Then the authorities got ready for war with thousands of feet of barricade along the street. Now, all this cost the city of Dallas about $100,000 a year, and it's a tough job for the police officers.
Fairly tough. Most of the problems would be people being intoxicated, just being loud.
They say the noise is that of a full-blown riot. Why in the world would you come down to something like this?
I've been one time. I should know better to come back again, but I've got some people that have never been before, so I had to bring them to show it.
You've never been before. What do you think so far?
Well, I think it's pretty fun, really. It's crazy what it is.
So crazy that more than 150 revelers will end up in jail tonight before it's over. Those who don't will be there to fill the Cotton Bowl tomorrow when OU will surprise the Longhorns with an upset, right?
If you look on the side of Oklahoma's roads, you know why there are so many no dumping signs around the state. The problem has finally prompted state and local governments to enact laws specifying strict fines. Unfortunately, most of the laws aren't enforced. State Representative Maxine Kinchelow has been waging war against trash for quite some time now. She says Oklahoma is being buried in it, and it's a costly affair. Last year, the state spent some $1.5 million in trash cleanup across Oklahoma. Kinchelow thinks part of the answer is education.
I believe we're going to have to educate our young people that not only is this a eye pollutant, but it's a health hazard, and that you do not have to dump. Anything you take in a car with you takes up no more room to take it back home with you. But as what we've seen today is an emphasis that just keeping bottles and cans off of the highways is not the only solution to the problem. It has to be a total statewide effort.
A statewide recycling program is supposed to be announced this month. How effective that will be is anyone's guess. Kinchelow suggests the state set up free trash dumps to help solve other problems. But many people feel that whatever is done, the problems won't be solved until public attitudes are changed. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4.
Through our heritage and our language and our culture, we've been able to survive all these years and be able to have a duality of our kinds of person, that one day we are conducting business as anybody else would. The next day we're sitting and conversing and listening and dealing with our own people in our own culture. And as much as possible we try to incorporate our cultural values within our business world.
We want quality. We want a good track, at least one, and then if there's more of them, that'd be quite fine with us.
Well, we've been hearing a lot about racetrack out at the state fairgrounds. I'll put you on the spot and ask you that. What's the possibility of that?
Well, it's according to the acreage they have. It's a non-profit organization. There's probably the top businessmen in Oklahoma City are on the board. It's a good organization. They've been successful. They know how to run a good entertainment, and that's what we're doing. That's its possibility.
The overcrowding problem has reached such proportions that any additional space that we can find in the system is sorely needed and very much appreciated. And we have plans to increase the population here from 100 to probably over 300 inmates in the coming year, and that will help that much more.
Stephen Sills, a 36-year-old management consultant, lost in the runoff election by 18 votes. He found that some Edmond residents had not voted in the proper district, so he challenged the election, which forced the Republican Party in Edmond into an unusual position. With the election 2 weeks away, the Republicans have no candidate to campaign for the general election. His workers have been busy trying to turn the election around. Still, Sills maintains he's not splitting the party.
I've had criticism about it, but I don't think it's well-founded at all. I think the Republican Party in House District 81 is so strong that that these kinds of things just build the strength of the party.
Only a few blocks away, workers for Sandra Gregg, a 33-year-old retail gift shop owner, have been busy mustering votes so they can win a third time. It has been a tough ordeal since Gregg supporters feel they won the first and second time around. Sandra Gregg says, contrary to what Stephen Sills says, the party has been hurt.
It's divisive to the Republican Party. It makes us concentrate on two candidates instead of one candidate at one time. You know, I've spent all my energy working on a rematch instead of working on the Democratic opponent, and I need to spend that time there.
The special election will cost taxpayers $3,600, and the man who has held this seat for so many years, Neil McCaleb, has failed to endorse either candidate. Meantime, the Democratic candidate, Diane Copeland, has concentrated her efforts on the general election in November. Bella Shaw, Action 4 in Edmond.
Today it was class as usual for the students at Truman Fifth Year Center. But while the students are busy learning, many of their parents are busy fighting the Oklahoma City Board of Education. 8 families are taking legal action against the board. They allege their children were victims of an illegal strip search. The families have made 3 requests. They want the board to transfer the school personnel involved in the search. They have requested that steps be taken to stop any further searches, and they want a child psychologist to counsel with the children who were searched. But if the parents' requests are not met, they will seek $25,000 in damages for each of their 9 children. Today I talked to the mother and grandmother of 2 of the children who say they were strip searched. Pamela Osborne says her girls were humiliated and personally degraded by the experience.
And Sandra told me that her panties and pants were taken down to her ankles. The gym teacher done the shoes and the socks. And Sandra told me that they made her unbutton and zip her pants, you know, just below the panties. And they felt to see if there was any money in her panties.
Nadella Foster, the principal at Truman, refused to comment today. but has previously stated to the media that there was not a strip search. While the case is in litigation, the children involved will remain in school at Truman. The school board has been given a 90-day deadline in which to take action on the matter. Debbie Mash, Action 4 at Truman 5th Year Center.
The energy audit program began in June last year under a federal mandate, and since that time, O.G E auditors have inspected around 10,000 homes and made efficiency recommendations. The resulting improvements, according to O.G E, has meant a savings of over 16,500 kilowatts. The system is simple. Auditors try to figure out how much energy a house may be losing through windows, walls, or the roof. Then they suggest what the homeowner needs to do to correct the problem. It helps them to control the peak times on the system, a move they say helps everyone.
We can curb the summer peak demand. Then what it means to the ratepayer is later down the road, maybe we will not have to build that generating plant, which to the consumer will be a savings.
The highest home energy factors are windows, insulation, and air conditioning, and those are the areas where the auditors spend their time. The audit costs the homeowner $15. But OG&E and a lot of their customers think the return on the investment makes it well worthwhile. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4.
An Oklahoma City viewer says, while vacationing in Oklahoma City last winter, my brother slipped and fell on an icy stair at a motel where he was staying. He injured his back and sprained his ankle, and he further injured an already bad knee, which still causes frequent visits to his doctor. Can he collect any damages from the motel keeper for his injuries? The answer is no. The Oklahoma Supreme Court has ruled that the motel keeper has no obligation to warn your brother against obvious dangers such as ice or snow. An innkeeper further has no legal duty to remove known or obvious hazards, which your brother should have observed in the exercise of ordinary care. However, the answer could be different if the icy buildup resulted not from the weather, but from an artificial source such as a leaky pipe or something of that nature. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A viewer writes in and says, about 3 months ago I sold my restaurant. The person who bought it went with me to the bank to make arrangements for the loan to make his down payment. The bank drew up a contract specifying the amount the buyer was to pay to me each month. I find now that he's sold the restaurant to another person, and now neither party will make the monthly installments. Who is obligated, and how can I get my money? The person you sold the restaurant to is responsible for the payments each month, whether he is sold to someone else or not. That is, unless you have released him from that obligation. If he won't make the payments or see that his buyer does, then he is in default, and you may take the steps outlined in your contract for the collection of your money in the event of default. Usually, in such a deal, you would have retained a security interest in the restaurant equipment, which could then be sold and applied to the debt. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A viewer says that we've been using a dirt road which crosses several persons' property since 1957. It's the only way onto our property without building a bridge. One of the landowners wants to close the road. Can he legally keep us out? Well, a person who needs to use a roadway across another person's property to gain access to his property may have what is called a way of necessity. A court, in deciding whether an easement by necessity should be allowed, would consider many factors, including whether it was a reasonable need, whether the two tracts of property were once owned by the same party, and the costs of acquiring another point of entry, including the cost of building a bridge. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
Shortly before 2 this afternoon, 2 black men in their early 20s robbed the local Federal Savings and Loan on the Northwest Expressway. While the robbers were in the bank, a third man, also described as a black male in his early 20s, waited in the parking lot. Oklahoma City Police Sergeant Lucian Jones describes what happened.
They were wearing masks, surgical gloves, and both carrying snub-nosed revolvers, as we understand it. One entered the branch manager's office, one went behind the counter. They announced that it was a robbery and forced someone in the business to hand over the money. We understand the amount is significant. We, of course, don't have a count yet until they do an inventory.
The robbers fled the Savings and Loan in this car, a stolen Toronado. They left the car at the Northwest Territory Apartments just a few blocks from the holdup. A witness at the apartment complex says the men got out of the car with a briefcase and ran through the complex. No suspects have been taken into custody. Debbie Mash, Action 4 in Northwest Oklahoma City.
This is the oldest jailhouse in Oklahoma, built in 1902, the Canadian County Jail in El Reno. It's only been remodeled once in the last 80 years, in 1974, and that renovation only made a dent in the many problems that concern the sheriff, the county commission, much of the Canadian county public, and the state jail inspector. Overcrowding, loose wiring, exposed plumbing, not to mention only one light for the entire cell block. But on Tuesday, the people spoke and voted down the $2 million bond issue for a new jail. Now the commission is concerned the state will close down the facility, which in itself would be expensive and inconvenient.
If it's going to cost us to transport them, we'll probably have to transport them to Weatherford, Anadarko, Kingfisher, or someplace that can take them, if they can take them. And then it's going to cost us probably $10 a day per prisoner. Plus, we'll probably have to buy some sort of van to transport them back and forth for their hearings and add some more personnel.
The bond issue to repair the jail fell only 3.5% short of passage. In the city of El Reno itself, the precinct showed a 67% in favor response, but in the eastern part of Canadian County, the voters said no. The response on the streets of Yukon today was mixed.
There's just too much money involved. They kind of tone it down a little bit, and we know they need one, and they're going to have one.
I voted for it. Of course, I'm partial to law enforcement's needs, though.
One sheriff's officer told Action 4 he'll be waiting for next week's visit of the jail inspector with a smile, but he doubts the inspector will be smiling. Dan Slocum, Action 4 in El Reno.
The controversy began last month when some of the students at Truman 50 Year Center said they were strip searched. Their families took legal action against the Oklahoma City School Board. The students tell one story, the administration another. It became an issue of the school board search policy and the constitutional rights of the students. That matter has not yet been resolved. Bill Bleakley, the school board's attorney, says the board's strip search policy is sometimes vague.
Generally, that relates to when it is necessary to preserve discipline and protect the safety and security of the students and their property. The degree of search is always a judgment call in terms of the facts of the particular situation.
The situation did not justify the strip search of their daughter, not according to these parents. They've asked to remain anonymous to save their daughter from further embarrassment. They say their 18-year-old daughter was strip searched last April at Southeast High School. Was it a pat down, or did they literally take her clothes off?
They literally taking her clothes off. And
stripped her down to her panties and her shoes and socks. That's all she had left on.
Action 4 was unable to contact officials at Southeast High School. Bill and Thelma say they contacted school officials last April, but nothing was done about the matter. They say they have now come forward with their story to make sure another strip search doesn't happen. Debbie Mash, Action 4 in Southeast Oklahoma City.
This Teresa. Charles Willman, call station 11.